Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
When was the last time someone asked you how you really were? And you actually told them the truth? Not the, "I'm fine, just a little tired" version. Not the version where you minimize, soften, and wrap your pain in a smile so nobody worries. The real truth. If you had to think about that for a moment, you are not alone. There's a version of you that exists only when no one is watching. A version who has real fears, real disappointments, real longings that you have learned, over decades, to keep very, very quiet. And today, I want to talk about why that happened, where it came from, and most importantly, whether it still has to be this way. Because here is what I know to be true: you did not start out hiding yourself. Nobody does. Somewhere along the way, life taught you that it was safer. This video is about understanding that lesson and gently, finally, beginning to unlearn it. If you are watching this, you have lived a full life. You have carried other people's needs. You have shown up for your children, your partner, your parents, your friends, your colleagues. Often before showing up for yourself, you have been the strong one, the dependable one, the one who holds it together when everything is falling apart. And over the years, a quiet trade happened without you even noticing it. You traded authenticity for acceptance. You traded truth for peace. You traded who you are for who everyone needed you to be. And for a long time, that felt noble. It felt like love. Maybe it was love. But now, maybe your children are grown. Maybe the roles that defined you have shifted. Maybe you are standing in a room full of people and still feeling completely alone. And there is this strange grief that comes with that. Not grief for a person, but grief for a self you kept postponing. A self who had opinions, desires, quirks, and edges that you slowly smoothed away so that you would fit more easily into the spaces others carved out for you. You are not broken. You are not too late. You are just ready. Maybe for the first time. So let's talk about why we hide and what it actually costs us. Here is something I want you to hear very clearly. You did not start hiding because you were weak. You started hiding because you were smart. In psychology, there is something called adaptive behavior, when a person learns to adjust who they are in response to what their environment rewards or punishes. If, growing up, you were praised for being quiet, agreeable, easy to manage, your brain learned, "This is how I stay safe. This is how I stay loved." And if you were ever punished, even subtly, for being too loud, too emotional, too much, too bold, your brain learned the opposite lesson of, "That version of me is dangerous." Hider. I think of it like this. Imagine a plant growing toward a window. It does not grow toward the window because it chose to. It grows there because that is where the light is. We are not so different. As little girls, as young women, we grew toward the light of approval. And over time, we bent ourselves in shapes we were never meant to hold. Not because something was wrong with us, but because something was wrong with the rooms we were placed in. The first step toward change is not shame. It is understanding. You hid yourself because, at the time, it was the wisest thing you could do. But wisdom also knows when the season has changed. Here is what nobody tells you about performing a version of yourself for long enough. Eventually, you forget that you are performing. There is a concept in psychology called the false self, a term first used by the British psychologist D.W. Winnicott. He observed that when children are forced to consistently meet the emotional needs of their caregivers, rather than having their own needs met, they develop what he called a false self, a socially acceptable front, a version of themselves built for function, for approval, for safety, for survival, rather than for truth. And here is the heartbreaking part: the false self is very convincing. Not just to others, but to you. I have spoken to women in their 60s who genuinely cannot tell me what they like. Not just what movies they prefer or what food they enjoy. I mean, what do they want their life to feel like? What makes them feel most like themselves? What would they choose if choosing for themselves felt allowed? They go quiet. And then they say something like, "No one has ever asked me that before." When you perform a role long enough, it becomes your identity. The agreeable wife, the selfless mother, the professional who never complains, the friend who always shows up but never asks for anything in return. And one day, often after a major life transition, a loss, a divorce, a retirement, children leaving home, the role disappears. And you are left standing there, face to face with a question that is both terrifying and sacred. Who am I when I am not being who everyone else needs me to be? That question is not a crisis. That question is an invitation. Let me tell you about a woman I will call Margaret. Margaret is 63. She spent 30 years in a marriage where her feelings were consistently minimized. When she cried, her husband would leave the room. When she expressed fear, she was told she was being dramatic. When she shared a dream, a small, quiet dream about writing or traveling or simply being seen, it was brushed away so quickly that she eventually stopped sharing at all. She did not do this consciously. She did not sit down one day and decide, "I will now become invisible." It happened slowly, then all at once, one silence at a time. By the time Margaret left that marriage in her late 50s, she had spent so long making herself small that smallness felt like home. Openness felt like danger. Being seen felt like bracing for impact. This is not a story about a bad husband, though he certainly was not kind. This is a story about what happens to the nervous system when it learns over and over again that showing yourself leads to pain. In neuroscience, we know that the brain is extraordinarily efficient. It learns patterns. And when vulnerability has been met with rejection or dismissal enough times, the brain categorizes it as a F threat. And your heart starts to open, and your nervous system sounds an alarm. Close down. Protect yourself. It is not safe. Or so when you find it hard to share how you really feel, when you pull back just as a real conversation is getting close, when you keep people at a comfortable arm's length, please do not judge yourself for it. Your nervous system is doing its job. It learned its lesson well. The work now is not to force yourself open. It is to gently, over time, teach your nervous system a new lesson, that there are safe people. That truth does not always lead to pain. That you are strong enough now to be seen. Here is one nobody expects. Sometimes we do not hide by disappearing. We hide by performing. A perfectionism is a mask. It is one of the most sophisticated, socially rewarded forms of self-concealment there is. Because when you are perfect, or striving for perfect, nobody can criticize these real you. They can only judge the performance. Brené Brown, in her research on shame and vulnerability, found that perfectionism is not the same as the pursuit of excellence. Perfectionism is rooted in what other people think. It is the belief that if I look perfect, do everything perfectly, and achieve perfectly, I can avoid the pain of being judged. But here is the cost. When you can only show people your polished self, your composed self, your accomplished self, your self that has it all together, you cut yourself off from the deepest form of human connection. Because real connection does not happen between two perfect presentations. It happens in the cracks, in the admission of if I am struggling, in the courage to say I do not have this figured out. I think of perfectionism as a glass case. Inside the case, you are protected. Nothing can touch you, but nothing can reach you either. You can be admired from a distance. But you cannot be as loved from a distance. And what most of us want, what most of us have always wanted, is not to be admired. It is to be known. Truly, fully, imperfectly known and loved anyway. The final reason we hide ourselves, and perhaps the most painful, is this: we are afraid that if people truly knew us, they would leave. And I will not insult you by telling you that fear is irrational, because maybe, in your experience, it was not. Maybe there were people who left when you stopped performing for them. Maybe there were relationships that depended on you being easy, pliable, uncomplicated. If those people left when you started taking up space, they were not loving you. They were loving your usefulness to them. That is a grief worth mourning. And then, it is worth releasing. Here is what is also true. There are people in this world who will love you more when you stop performing. People who have been quietly waiting for you to drop the mask because they could see the weight of it. People who find your uncertainty endearing, your quirks delightful, your edges interesting rather than inconvenient. You may not have found all of them yet, but I promise you, they exist. And you cannot find them while you are wearing a face that is not yours. There is a very simple but deeply moving idea from the philosopher Martin Buber. He said there are two kinds of relationships. The first is I, it, where you relate to another person as an object, a function, a role. The second is dry, thou, where two people meet each other as full human beings. Whole, complex, real. Most of us have spent our lives in it relationships, where we are the role, the mother, the wife, the helper, not the person. To be seen in an I, thou relationship, even once, even for a moment, changes you. It reminds you that you are not the role you play. You are the person underneath it. You deserve that kind of seeing. You always have. So where do we go from here? Not with a dramatic overhaul. Not with a declaration to the world. We go gently. We begin in the quiet spaces. With one honest answer when someone asks how you are doing. With one boundary that honors what you actually need. With one moment of sitting with your own company, without rushing to be useful to anyone. We begin by getting curious about that version of you that you have kept hidden. Not judging her, not rushing her, just asking her what she has been waiting to say. She has been patient. She has waited a long time. And this is important. You do not have to show yourself to everyone. Authenticity is not the same as radical oversharing. It is not about announcing your wounds to every person who asks how you are. It is about choosing intentionally, deliberately, who gets to see the real you, and then letting them. It is also about the relationship you have with yourself. About sitting in front of a mirror and not immediately cataloging what is wrong. About finishing a day and saying, I did the best I could, and that is enough. About honoring your own feelings as real information, not as weakness, not as drama, but as the honest signals of a human being who is paying attention to her life. You have spent decades learning how to be there for other people. What would change if you decided to also be there for yourself? What would shift if you stopped treating your own truth as something to be managed and started treating it as something worth knowing? I believe this. The most radical thing a woman of your wisdom and experience can do right now is not to change careers or move across the world or become someone unrecognizable. It is simply to stop apologizing for existing as you are. Your age is not a closing chapter. It is the chapter where you finally get to write in your own handwriting. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Is there one person in your life, just one, with whom you feel safe enough to be a little more real? One person who already knows some of the real you and has stayed. If that person came to mind just now, hold that thought. That relationship is worth tending to. And if no one came to mind, that is okay too. That is information, and it is the beginning of a question worth sitting with. If this video found you at the right moment, if something here touched something real in you, will you do one small thing for me? Type the words I am reclaiming my peace in the comments below. Not for me, for yourself. Because saying it, even in writing, even to strangers on the internet, is a small act of visibility. It is you saying, I am here, I matter, and I am ready to stop hiding. I read every comment, and I want to hear from you. If this resonated, please share it with one woman in your life who might need to hear it. Sometimes the most healing thing we can do for someone else is simply say, "If I thought of you, I will see you in the next video. Take good care of yourself. You have earned it.